Hey, welcome to Gaming Group Night. Defenders of the Table. This is a tutorial on creating a character in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition. We're going to use the 2nd Edition Player's Handbook, and we're going to go through sections 1 through, step by step, 1 through 6. Now, we do use the optional rules, so we're going to go right through there. And then you also see there's some house rules thrown in there, so you might want to get yourself a copy of the house rules, which you can find on the site, and a copy of the Player's Handbook, which you can get from dndclassics.com, or you can, if you don't have a hard copy, you can order a hard copy. I know they still have them on eBay. Or you can check out purpleworm.org. That's an excellent resource for just keeping the game alive. You'll also need to print out or open up the character sheet, which you can find right below this tutorial. There's a button, click that button to open up, and there's an editable PDF, and you can just fill it in, or you can print that out. And if you print it out, you'll need some dice, and you'll need a pencil to fill it in. Also included on the site is a dice roller, or you can link and just do a Google search, and you'll be able to find what you need. So when we get started here, we'll just explain some basic mechanics, a little bit about the character sheet and what we're doing. Talk about the ability scores, select your race, and your class. So like I previously mentioned, you will need a copy of the house rules, because we're creating a character for 2nd edition AD&D, specifically for the game, for the Gaming Group Nights game that we host every other Friday, either at my house or at one of the other guys' house, or we also play online. So if you're watching this because you want to get on the Roll20 game, that's pretty awesome too. So here's a real quick what the character sheet looks like for those of you who haven't played in a while or haven't ever played 2nd edition, and you want to get one of the throwback editions to see what it's all about. Not quite where it started, but almost. Up here in the top, you'll see there's the player character record section. That's all the fleshing out of your character, your ability scores, movement, saving throws, and we're gonna walk all the way through this, all the way to basically gear and supplies. So my campaign, we use 2 methods for generating your ability scores. You can either use the method 5 out of the Player's Handbook, roll 4d6, discard the lowest one, and I think I kind of modify that even a little bit because you can then assign the next 6 numbers any way you'd like. You can still roll 1s, and you can still get a lower character. Most people, however, go with our custom method. This is something I picked up from another game. I believe it was when I was in the Army and played in Korea, where you roll 1d6 and add it to 12, and you're generating a higher level, kind of like the super character. But when we played those quick campaigns, when we actually had time, it made it a lot of fun when you didn't spend a couple hours or a half hour rolling up a character and then just to have him die. So I always enjoyed that, and since we only play a couple times a month because of our schedules, I think that's the way to go. As far as racial bonuses, they do apply. I do allow, if you have a character that says, like for instance a half-orc, I do let the half-orc non-fighters gain exceptional strength. So a half-orc rogue, for instance, if you rolled an 18 or assign an 18 in that in your strength, your +1 to strength bonus would actually give you a 100%. So, and then of course, if you were a fighter, you'd be able to get that +1 to your strength. So just kind of going over the charts, you'll see these are tables. So when you do roll, the numbers on the left-hand side are the ability scores. Those are your dice rolls, and you just want to fill out your chart. I'm going to go through this a little bit quick. Just kind of want to show you what it's all about. Your hit probability is going to get added to your attack rolls, and we'll talk about that in another tutorial about some of the game mechanics and combat. Damage adjustment is just that. It's what you add to damage that you do with your melee weapons. Weight allowed is how much you carried. We do play with the rules for encumbrance, and we use the optional tournament style tables. Maximum press is the maximum amount you can lift. Open doors is a one-time chance you get to open a door on a 1d20. You want to get below that number. So one of the things about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons that some people don't like, I like it, is the math and mechanics in it. There's a lot of different triggers or target numbers that are, some you have to roll below, some you have to go above. I like it. It keeps you sharp. Bend bars, lift gates, just that. And then with your dexterity, you have your reaction adjustment. Now that is your reaction to being surprised. And then your missile attack adjustment and your defensive adjustment. You can lose. You'll want to, on your defense adjustment, you'll really want to keep two armor class numbers, one with your dexterity and one without, because if you're prone or if you're not able to move out of the way, you wouldn't get that bonus. Constitution, basically it's your health. Your ability scores, those numbers. Now you notice I didn't give all the numbers. I went from 13 to 20, assuming you're going to use the custom method. There are some character classes that get pluses to their constitution, so you could have a higher constitution and get actually even be able to regenerate. Additionally, your hit point bonus, that's what you're going to get when you get your hit points. We'll talk about that later. System shock and resurrection survival can become important depending on how often your character dies and what kind of decisions you make during the game. And going on to intelligence, the number of languages, the way we use that in our campaign is that's actually added slots to your proficiencies. Like I said, we use chapter 5, we use proficiencies. It's not an optional rule in this campaign. And we can talk a little bit more of that when we cover the tutorial on the house rules. Your spell levels, the next maximum levels you can cast as a mage or wizard or a specialist, and we'll talk about that. Chance to learn spells, just that. Number of maximum spells, I use this a little bit different. So that's the max. That's the number that I use that you start out with. Which if you read through, you'll see that that's definitely a tweak and to the house rule. Wisdom really plays into if you're being a priest. That magic and the magic defense adjustment actually plays into anyone whenever you're going to make a saving throw versus a magical effect. Bonus spells are for priests and rangers at their level, and paladins when they can begin to cast priest spells. Chance of spell failure, that's if your spell, you would roll that if you had a lower wisdom and you were casting a spell, and you'd have a chance that your spell would fail. Charisma, the maximum number of henchmen, that's the most amount of people that you're going to have influence over. So really that's how effective of a leader are you. Loyalty base, if you start to make bad decisions or try to, you got Toby the thief that tags along with you, and you're constantly asking Toby to run in there and put himself in harm's way. Eventually he's gonna, it's gonna start to wear down on him. There's a chance that he might leave, or there's a chance that he can be persuaded to do something against you. And we use dice and we use mechanics to figure, kind of try to make it random and kind of fair. Reaction adjustment, that is for the reaction if somebody else is talking to you, not reaction as if you're surprised. So there's two different types of reaction adjustments. Character classes, so there's character races. Sorry, there's lots of different races in Forgotten Realms, and that's where we start our campaign out. I enjoy the Forgotten Realms. I've enjoyed them for a long time. Started playing in the Forgotten Realms in the late 80s. I actually started playing in second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in 1989 when it came out. 1985, my uncle came. 1984, my uncle came home from Germany and taught me and a bunch of my cousins the game, and I fell in love with it. And a few years later, second edition came out, and I've been playing it as much as I possibly could my whole life. So anyway, so you can be dwarves, elves, halflings, humans, and then the half breeds, I guess you'd call them. I like to call them half breeds of half orc and half elf in my campaign. One of the things I do knock out though is I don't put limits on the different races. As far as never understood why a dwarf, except for power, you know, why a dwarf would have to cap out at their level. So I do let dwarves, elves, halflings, well, and gnomes, humans, and then the half breeds advance to any level, and I let them play any class, so I don't restrict classes as well. So you could play a dwarven paladin or an elven druid. I never understood why you couldn't. So in my campaign, that's what I like to do. I let people play the characters that they want to play. Now, in the starter campaign, I've ran campaigns where we've played all Drow or all Drow and Durger, or, the Underdark, and that'd have to be a specific campaign. I typically, and we'll talk about this in Homeland, but I typically like to start off beginning campaigns, especially people that I never really played with before. In the Dale Lands, Cormier, Symbia type area, those Heartlands, the Western Heartlands, and it's mainly because I'm just so familiar with it. I mean, that's the most developed material out there. Though over the years, there's a lot of really good material on the Forgotten Realms, and just about every area of the world is pretty fleshed out, from the hordes and the Oriental Ventures and Alcadim and Masakia, and just all the different areas and source books that are out there, and they just continue to grow in it. But like I said, you can play any of these races, and you really want to look at the house rules to see what how they've been adjusted. A couple key things that you'll see here: the elves. I did make little tweaks to them. Every elf starts off with proficiency in a longbow and a short sword. I'm sorry, long and short sword, and all bows. So I do use broad groups. You'll see that when we get there. Humans. So because they don't have the advantage of being the only race that could advance to whatever level. I give them a little bit. I do get them. You get an extra bonus proficiency, non-weapon proficiency or weapon proficiency, however you want to spend it, and then you get a 5% bonus on all your experience. So you're going to gain levels quicker if you do decide to play a human. And I just attribute that to our adaptability and our drive. Half elves, their gift is they get to progress in any class, and half orcs, the same. So character sheets, I'm sorry, player characters, your classes, you're basically, you have four categories: warrior, wizard, priest, and rogue. And there are some other ones like psionist, but I don't play with that in my campaign. Starting off later, if we start to playing for a few years together, or maybe not a few years, but a few sessions, and you have a character that dies, and you want to introduce a character, just because they can be very unbalancing to the game, and it just puts another mechanic in it that, quite frankly, if I don't have to deal with it, I don't like to. So, warriors, wizards, priests, rogues, and the pretty standard classes: fighter, ranger, paladin. Haven't really made that many changes. If you look at a little bit to spellcasting, and you'll have to look in the house rules for that. So warriors are pretty much that classic brawler, right? You have your fighter, who's the soldier, brawler, swordsman; paladin, which is the holy warrior; or the ranger, woodsman. Popular character in Forgotten Realms: Dritz Dulander, ranger; Bruner Bannerhammer, fighter. Wizards. This is your classic, Gandalf, casting spells, or Elminster. They're mage. Mage studies all the different aspects of magic or wizardry. And then the illusionist would be an example of a specialist. So there's different schools of magic, and as a mage, you study or dabble in all of the schools, but you can also specialize. Now here we do use some the spells and magic, we do use some pick and choose really what we use out of the player's options. But for this tutorial, and if you're making a brand new character and you're watching this, you really just want to look through that player's handbook, and feel free to pause this at any time so you can look through there and pick a character class that you think you want to play. I highly recommend, if you've never played before, playing either a rogue or a warrior. It's going to be really the easiest to kind of wrap your hand around the mechanics of how to play that character. And then a priest, there's clerics, and then there's specialty style priests, which in this case are druids. Priests are just that. They're clerics. They have a deity, pretty much of any mythos. They get powers granted that through there, and they're pretty much servants of the community in most cases. Rogues, that's your thief or your bard. I don't know what else needs to be said about thieves. Bards, if you're not familiar, it's really a Nordic term, but in here in this game use bards as they have all kinds of different abilities, but they do definitely have the rogue abilities. They play music, poetry, tell stories. You'll find bards entertaining at the local inn or tavern, and so yeah. Player character classes or kits. I did want to mention kits. I do allow kits if you want to use them to flesh out your character. However, I only allow the Forgotten Realms kits. So you would need to look through the warriors and priests, or wizards and rogues, or one of the demi-human handbooks, demi-humans of the realms, to pick a kit from there. Now I do know, like the elves, they do. If you look in the elves of Evermeet, they refer back to the Elven player Elven player's handbook. So you're free to use some of those, but I really would like to keep it Forgotten Realms specific. So we've been talking now for almost 15-20 minutes. So if you need to take a break, hit pause, look at some of this material either on one of the websites I mentioned if you've already downloaded a PDF, or if you have a hard copy of the book. Just kind of look through those different sections and flesh out your character, and now you can start choosing maybe a name if you have that in mind. But definitely, roll your dice, roll for your ability scores, get those entered into the character sheet, look at the charts, get that information filled in. You're going to want to pick your character class based off your attributes or your abilities. Depending on where you land, you really, if you have a 18 in strength and a 12 or a 13 in intelligence, maybe a fighter would be more suited than a wizard. And then picking your race doesn't really play into character class anymore, but it's just a good idea to pick the race, and just so you see what you're looking at while you're doing that is you can see where the Dale lands are in Symbia and Cormyr, and kind of see where we start. We start right in that area. So go ahead, and if you need to, hit pause and take a break. If you did pause, welcome back, and if not, let's just keep going. If you want to go through the character, if you're just using this as more of a refresher, we're going to carry on with choosing your alignment, and I'll do my best to explain the alignments. It's something that you kind of pick up on. The mechanics, what I'm talking about, the mechanics here are your hit points and getting your saving throws together and all that good stuff, and picking out your proficiencies. Now really I just kind of brush over the proficiencies. You're going to need that player's handbook, or there's a couple excellent net books out there for 2nd edition that list just hundreds of different proficiencies, and that's basically what your character's skills are other than your fighting profession. And then talk a little bit about the homelands, but that's again this tutorial. As far as developing, we're really looking at 3 areas. If you're more familiar with Forgotten Realms and you're joining my campaign and you'd like to pick a different area, I'm usually pretty open-minded. If you can come up with a good story, especially if you're willing to write a good backstory, I like to see that and get that posted on the forums and just help build the story of the characters. So starting off with alignment, I picked some popular shows. I found some memes, and I thought this is a good way to kind of explain it. Starting off with lawful. So there's two, I guess, categories. There's you have law and chaos, and then the neutrality between that, and then you have good and evil, and the neutrality between that. So what I try to do here is explain the lawful versus law versus chaos, and then we look at good versus evil, and there's the neutrality between them. So lawful, that's someone who picking that alignment. You follow the social structure, whether that's good, neutral, or evil. You believe that in that strong sense of organization and order. So examples of that, you have here the lawful good, lawful neutral, and lawful evil. If you're familiar with the shows, you kind of understand the personalities, and maybe that can help you decide when you're looking at that. We have chaos. People, pretty much, there's no order or anything. There's no careful balance or force in the universe. It's just you have the power to have over your own destiny, and your society's good to protect the individual rights, but it's more about the individual. And I'm not talking about being a hedonist, because you can be kind of good, and I'm just you're not. They don't believe in the order of things. Neutral, that's right in between. So when you're talking about law and order, and you're neutral, you're seeking that balance between order and chaos. That line between the yin and the yang. The only times they really get moved to make any type of a neutral person to make any type of power, unless you're fighting specifically for good and evil, is when there's some kind of unbalance in the force. So good versus evil. Good characters, I mean, they're just that. They're good. There's different. Everyone has different sets of morals of what is good and what's not good. But I think there's some pretty commonalities. Like most folks would say that it's not good to steal from other people or just take whatever you want. That would be considered an evil trait in the majority of the societies, or at least the places that I've been in my life. And evil is just the opposite of good. It's they're I think I've never truly met anyone that was just evil. Everyone makes mistakes, but evil is like good, is it's interpreted differently in different societies. So that one's again, don't want to get into a philosophical debate, but uh, in my campaigns I only allow good characters. So you can play lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, or you could play lawful neutral or true neutral. Chaotic neutral is just too chaotic. Chaotic neutral means you don't care good or evil either way, and you don't really have an opinion on law and chaos. You're just striking that balance, and typically it's being portrayed as someone who's a little bit crazy. So that's what I found is it's to play that correctly. It's very unbalancing to the game. So kind of messes with the game, and then just the enjoyable, making it not so much enjoyable for other players. Unless you get everybody to agree to play that type of campaign. Evil, I just don't enjoy running evil campaigns. So it's sometimes it's fun at first for the first few levels or months or sessions, but then everyone's evil, everyone's out for themselves, and eventually there's a power struggle and people kill each other, or they burn down the towns and villages, and it's just kind of in my mind defeats the purpose of playing one of these games. So And of course, there's neutral. We talked about neutrality between lawful and chaotic, and now that we're talking about here is the neutrality of that moral stance, kind of refraining from passing judgment. That's the way the second edition describes it. So you more than welcome to play a lawful neutral or even a true neutral. I find true neutral kind of difficult to play. If you do a quick, if you're not sure what you want to play as far as alignment goes, one of the good alignments or even a neutral. If you do a quick search, just a Google search on, what's my alignment, there's some pretty good little tests on there, even on your attributes if you want to figure out, what you would personally be as a character. I've done it a few times. I think it's kind of fun. So once you choose what your alignment's going to be, and you've already chosen your class, and we know there might be some adjustments, you come in, you find your character class: priest, rogue, warrior, wizard. And I still recommend warrior and wizard if you've never, or I'm sorry, warrior and rogue if you've not played or it's been a while since you played. They're just easier to get the mechanics down. You come in and you write your saving throws. Saving throws come into effect when you're coming into one of these specific situations. So if you're going to get a breath weapon on you, and that could be the breath weapon, the everyone thinks that fire breath of the dragon, but there's other breath weapons as well, or things that can fall under. Petrification or polymorph spells. There are some spells that allow saving throws, and you can make saving throw versus spells. So there's some different situations here that you can use for making saving throws. I also use your ability scores to make saving throws. So there might be something where you might have a feat of strength, or you're very dexterous, so you're able to dodge out of the way of something. Anyone familiar with some of the other editions might find those terms, that I'm using, familiar. But I assure you that it's not the same. I don't break that far away from second edition. That's really the game that I grew up playing. That's the game I like playing. I think, in my opinion, third and fourth, and I haven't played fifth yet, but those other editions really just, it's not the same game. It's not even the same game. So that's my opinion. THAC0. This is how you hit. You calculate to hit armor class 0. So 0 is the base number, and you can go up to 10 or down to -10 with your armor class. And everyone has a THAC0 on what they need to roll at first level. We're all the same, except for any strength bonuses you might have for hitting. And we're really going to talk about THAC0 or cover THAC0 in the combat tutorial on some of the mechanics of the game. But it's important to log that. And I still like to play with the old. You'll see on the character sheet that I chose to put on here. I actually got that from the Mad Irish website. You could do a search for that, Google, and you'll find that there's tons of resources out there for second edition still. So if you look at that, you might choose a different character sheet. The one I picked, I think it's pretty well rounded, especially for first level characters or people just starting out. It still has that chart. If you ever played the original Dungeons and Dragons, that THAC0 chart was something that was included on the character sheet, and I just like that. So it makes it easier for calculating out your what armor class you hit, and that's something that your dungeon master, which will be me. In this case, if you're watching this tutorial, you're probably watching it to make a character for a roll 20. So I can't wait to play. It's going to be fun. Hit points. Now I do something a little bit different. If you look at your house rules, it's something again that I picked up when I was playing with a group of fellas, and I'm not sure who made it up or where they got it from, but at first level, a lot of times the groups of folks that I played with or have played with in the past, we're not like long groups where we play for year after year like I did when I was in elementary school, middle school, and high school. I played with the same people for 10 years, 12 years, and then what I found over the years is really get a group of people together for a few months, or maybe at the longest it's been is a year. So you don't get to play as much as adults. So what I do is I start off your Constitution plus your Constitution bonus is your starting hit points. So yes, You can have a wizard that starts off with like a 15 hit points. Some people feel that that's unbalancing, but I do adjust appropriately some of the encounters, especially at the higher levels, not at first level, because again, it's no fun pouring in a half hour when you only play for 4 or 5 or 6 or maybe if you're lucky 10 hours a month. When you're spending a lot of time creating characters. When you're playing every day, that's a different story. So once you get off the first level, though, we do go right back to the warrior, priest, rogue, D10, D8, D6, D4 plus your Constitution bonus. Base movement, like I said, we do play with the weight. We do play with encumbrance. We use the tournament rules, so it's kind of a step down process based on the weight, based on what you can carry in your strength. So there's everyone based on your race. You have a base movement rate, either of 12 or 6, and your base rate is on the chart to the right is your encumbrance chart, and then you look at your strengths, the strength on the row, follow the column over, and I think I did that backwards. Follow down the column, move to the right of the row, and the top of those two top, depending if you have a 6 or a 12. And as you start to get more weight on your character, that's how your movement rate drops. And we'll review that as we play. If we're playing in Roll20, I'll set that on your character. If we're playing on the tabletop, it's just something you kind of have to keep track of, and I'll just remind you from time to time, to just ask you how it's going. Proficiencies. So these are skills that this is right out of the player's handbook. So these are the non-essential skills to your profession. So as a fighter, there's things that you learn. As a wizard, there's things that you learn. These are kind of those other things. So I have a job that I do, and then there's other things that I enjoy doing. So I become proficient at things that aren't necessarily part of my everyday job. And that's kind of where this comes into play. I do use proficiencies. I try to use them often. I encourage the players to use them. I think that makes the game more rounded and just more fun when you're leaving more things up to the mechanics into the role playing and just kind of reacting to those situations, and that's what I like to do. So once you spend a slot, that's it. You can't change it. You can't reassign it. So if you at first level you decided you were going to pour some stuff into something, and third level you decided you don't like that anymore, well, you should have planned a little better. Not to be harsh, but that's that's the rules. So I think it just makes it fair. Proficiencies are divided into two categories: weapons and non-weapon proficiencies. Weapon proficiencies are proficiencies. I do use broad groups and tight groups, and you'll kind of see that, and you'll see that in the house rules. So if you look at the house rules that you find on this website, you'll see how those are broken down, and that's out of the combat and tactics, or skills and powers, combat and tactics, players options. And I do allow anyone can purchase those, and there's different costs as far as to your slots. Picking homelands, I start off generally somewhere in either Cormier or in the Dale lands. I really like if it's a new group and we've never really played together. They have a couple core modules, especially the Hana Halls of Evening Star, and I've just done a lot of customization to it over the years and really fleshed it out. So I like running that as a starter campaign. It kind of gave me a good feel to because there's the mountains right there, there's the plains, there's the interacting in Cormier itself. You can get to a town, you can get to a city. There's just a lot you can do, so I can really get a flesh out for the players, for the characters, and just how you're going to engage in the game and interact with each other. And it really lets me set the tone for the rest of the campaign. So that's just how I like to start off when I've got back into role playing here a few years ago. I did take a little break when we had my first daughter, which is she's awesome. But my wife's kind of encouraged me and let me pick my hobbies back up. So it's pretty cool. There's just time to do that. So You can be from Symbia. Symbia is pretty much the merchants of the area, the power traders. There are a lot of folks there, or the people from there are generally always trying to get that leg up. The Dales are really a loose, kind of like loose areas. I would even call them city states. They just don't even have any real populace. Think of the frontier, the wilderness, the frontier. It's mainly forests and rolling farmlands. And there's some roads in there linked with little roads. There's some major roads and trade routes, and they do trade, but that really was the center of the Elven court for a long time before the Great Retreat, as they call it. I think there's currently like 9 different Dales in the campaign setting. That's another thing that's important to know is for those of you familiar with Forgotten Realms, I start off in 1337, which is right a few years after King Azun has entered took his crown. It's before some other things happen. If you're familiar, you'll know what those are. And I actually like to play through those events that happen, including the burning down of Flan. So, if interested, that's another campaign that I enjoy running. Like I said, I've been playing Forgotten Realms for a long time, and I have a lot of the resources available to me as far as being able to play some of the older modules, and I've adapted them into second edition, um, and other things too. But that's what I really enjoy playing is the second edition. Dale Lands, we really talked about that, and then Cormier. When describing Cormier to people who don't know Cormier or know the Forgotten Realms for Faerun, uh, it's easy to compare it to Camelot. It's one of the oldest kingdoms of this area. It's human kingdoms, I should say, of this area. It's There's a lot of things that are against it, and it still survives. It's Think of a fair and just monarch with nobles and the military force, and they have law and order. So that's it's a fun place to start, a fun place to play. So if you'd like to take another intermission, so it's been another 15 minutes or so, and we're hitting well past a half hour of generating your character. If you want to hit pause, you can do a little bit more research on one of those 3 areas. Realms Help is a great one to go to, a great site to go to. They have all kinds of information on there. Now they do keep up with the most current timeline, but you can go back in there and find some of the older stuff, and just if it's something that hasn't happened yet, I'll let you know. For instance, wild magic has not happened yet, so if you do choose a character, there are no wild mages yet, and that's why I didn't include it in there. So, and nor are there wild magic areas yet. So it all depends on how my Forgotten Realms campaigns all progress differently for every group of folks. It all depends on how you respond and how you decide to play the game and interact with the different events. So go ahead and hit pause, look that stuff up, flesh out the rest of your character, and when you're ready, hit play, and we'll continue on. Well, welcome back, or if you're just keeping going, we'll just keep running through here. So last little bit here is fleshing out the characters. This is you can either choose or roll a lot of things like your birth rate and your ranking, your height, your weight, your age, all those things. You can just pick those things if you like to, or you can roll them out. If you do want to play just random, I like to go that route, just making it random, because even me personally and you, we didn't get to choose who we are. We just kind of became who we are, as far as being our attributes, like our physical attributes, height, weight, that kind of thing. Talk about money, starting money, and that fleshes out with that social class. I do play with that. Equipment, I just a little bit of recommendation for our new time players. Just go over a few things that I think every brand new character should have on their character sheet, and then really just thanks for watching this. Thanks for your interest in second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Thanks for your interest in gaming group night. The goal here is to defend the table as it is, and just have live action or live interaction, I should say, not live action. There's no LARPing here. Um, that just interaction with the gameplay and actual physically meeting around a table and storytelling and interacting together. That's the goal of the group. So um, and we'll go ahead and just keep going. So fleshing out your character, your starting age, again, you're totally free to just pick what age you want it to start with, but there is the base age with a little bit of variable, so at least be the minimum, that minimum variable. So if you decide that you're going to play a dwarven druid, you need to start at the minimum of 45th level. Maximum age, if you want to roll that, you can. You don't have to note that anywhere in your character sheet right now. That's something we could throw in later down the road, depending on how long, how it works out and how long you decide to play with us, and um, just depending on how long your character survives. So I'd hope that all of them grow to the rightful age, but and I'd like to run. I've ran a few. It's been a while since I ran campaigns into the. Anyone familiar with the Dungeons and Dragons, the original, the gold set? It's been a while since I ran anything that high level, and I do enjoy doing that as well. Height and weight, you can pick it if you'd like to, or you can roll it. Here's the charts. Um, that these are right out of the player's handbook. So this is something that's in there. Females do tend to be a little bit lower. If you'd like to look that up, you can look up what the different ratios and ranges are. But in Forgotten Realms, like I said, if you go to Realms Help, so if you want to pause and jump over there and look at that, they actually give out the different, I guess, races, if you will, um, and some of the different effects of the different areas. So like what a someone that's a Chandathian, or what someone that's uh, you know from Thay, what their differences are. Maharan. Um, then the skin tones, heights, weights, that kind of stuff. So it's up to you how much you want to develop your character. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of the gaming session. So I really encourage you to have a good backstory and really develop that character, and get into it when we're playing. So your circumstance of birth, just kind of fleshing it out. Again, you can pick your background, or you can roll it and make it random. With that, if you do make it random, not so much circumstance of birth, but if you do make it random in the when rolling your social class, or where you're born at, there's some little bit of bonuses there, and we'll talk about that in a second. So social class and your starting money. So I do play with social class. It does make I give behind the scene reaction adjustments. Um, if you're I was not born. I don't know if you can tell or not. I was not born with a silver spoon. I work, but I know that depending on your upbringing and your background, and um, just your mannerisms from your class, if you will, sometimes you'll have an easier time than folks that maybe are not of the higher class. So the upper class, that would be the emperors and the kings and the high nobles, and those folks. I mean, they're going to get a different type of treatment than the lower class, who basically a serf, or a slave. Um, and you can see over here, so that money bonus is a multiplier. So if you're a lower class, if you're lower, and that's the ranking in the middle. So you have the lower class, middle lower class, and upper lower class. That lower class, middle class, upper class is really what we're focused on, the second part of that. Um, so if you're lower class, you don't get any type of bonus. If you're middle class, you multiply your starting money by 2, and your upper class, it would be by 3. So say you rolled a 89%, and you're a warrior. So you can write in your story that maybe you're the the daughter of a barbarian chieftain, and you were raised to be a warrior, or you're the son of a knight that served in the the Cormyrean purple dragons, and so that it just helps you flesh out that story. So if you roll it, you get the bonus. If you pick it, you don't get the bonus. A warrior that would be upper class, you'd roll 5d4 times 10, and then you'd multiply that number by 3. So just something I do to kind of help flesh out the character and give that that more support to the characters when you're developing your character. Some equipment that I recommend: clothing. I If you want to just pick clothing and write it down and not charge your character depending on the money that you have or whatever, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, everybody's going to be wearing clothes. This is pretty much the starting clothes that I allow. The If you pick the common robe, then you wouldn't have the breeches, and I didn't just notice that I didn't have the shirt on there, but you'd have a shirt or a tunic on there. Belt, boots, breeches, which are pants, maybe a hat if you want it, a cloak, a knife sheath. I mean, most people carry a knife that they use not for combat, but they use for, eating with, or just it's the common tool of the day. And then if you're a priest or a wizard, you'd have the robe instead of the other things, and then either a tunic, that was a common garb of the day, or of the realms, or a shirt. And you can look in the player's handbook under equipment, and you'll see all those listed out. Unless you're carrying, 20 pairs of everything, or there's really no weight to that, so you don't have to worry about calculating that out. And then I just calculate the cost, and then what I typically do is I just break everything down to the lowest common denominator. So in this case, it'd be copper pieces. So that'd be, the soft boots cost 100 copper pieces. Breeches are 200 copper pieces. The silver pieces, those are 10 copper pieces. So I break it out that way, add it all down, and then just divide it back by that common denominator, so you can find out, what it is in gold, silver, and copper. As far as the equipment, I think this is a pretty good starting package. You can go out there and search online and look, especially in third and really in fourth edition. They really detail these like starter kits up. That were kind of neat, a neat idea. This is the things that I would, when I played years and years and years ago as a character and not a player character, not the dungeon master. I always found these things useful. Some people are going to agree. Some people are going to disagree. If you've never played before, or never played second edition before, and you were looking for that starting kit, this is something you can go off of. But you're really encouraged to just build that stuff off of your background that you're developing. Backpack pouch, you can read here. So you just look really at the bottom is the weight, 31.5 pounds, and that goes into your encumbrance for your movement rate, how much you're going to be able to carry, and then just what your cost of that would be. And of course, you do want your armor and your weapon. So I always recommend buying armor and weapon first, so that you make sure that you have that, and then purchase whatever's left after that. And just a reminder that priests, whatever you do get as far as your starting money, whatever you don't spend, you don't start with, except for maybe a few gold pieces just as far as traveling away from your temple or your sanctuary, or whatever it is that you left. Priests, I'd recommend adding holy items. And then wizards, I recommend a scroll or map case to keep any spells or writings in, and then parchment. And then, of course, if you're a thief, you'll want to get thief picks. Also, I do allow the Aurora's Guide. There's a few items, like anything from Aztecia has not arrived yet. The traders over there on the west coast have not made it across there yet. So, like I said, there's a lot of things that happen in the realms that they could be headed off by you as a player in the campaign or as part of your group, or you can be involved in them. So I like to start off in an earlier timeline and just kind of have you go through. So really, each of my Forgotten Realm campaigns are kind of unique in that way, as far as what's going on in the different timelines. I mean, I've ran campaigns where wild magic never happened because the campaigns, the characters were able to head off those those things and stop those things from happening. So I hope this has been useful for you. If you've sat down with me and you've written everything down and made the decisions and hit pause, it's probably take you about an hour or a little bit more to flesh out your character. So you can see those little tweaks that I made. Uh, when we're only playing, when we're only meeting twice a month on set time, and if you're meeting on the roll 20 and we're only meeting once a month to play, it kind of, you put a lot of time investment into creating character just to have them die because they're weak at the lower levels. I put those tweaks in there to kind of compensate for that, but still, it doesn't give you too much of an advantage to make it where it's just completely unbalanced. So, I hope you're still interested. I hope you're enjoyed this and got the character together. I'm going to make a few more tutorials on the mechanics of second edition, and even if you don't play my campaign, you'll still be able to follow along. This went right through those 9 steps that are listed in the front of the player's handbook. This went right through those steps in order, except for the homeland part. I just threw that in there, but it is something that's listed on your character sheet. Before you pick a homeland, I would get with whoever your DM or GM is going to be. If you don't have a tabletop group, I highly recommend Roll 20. I've found that I really enjoy that over any of the other online environments, but nothing beats getting in together with a group of friends and having someone tell a story and just reacting to it, rolling dice, having snacks, and even going off on those little diversions now and then. But really, just sticking together and playing, it just nothing beats that. It's just a lot of fun. Um, and the older I get, the more, believe it or not, the more I enjoy that of being able to come together with folks I don't work with and I don't see on a daily basis, or not just part of my church community, but people from different walks of life and different environments that we come together and have the opportunity to play and just have a lot of fun. So to the people that are currently in my group, thanks a lot. People are looking to join us. Let us know. Email me. People that are jumping on the Roll 20 and wanting to play the AD&D, like I said, I'm getting a monthly game going there because I do like to play a couple different formats. And if you're interested in that, go to our website or my website, Gaming Group Knight, and that's Knight as in Knight in Shining Armor, because I am the defender of the tabletop.